Rita, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us this morning, taking some time out for us.
Glad to do so.
I want to start with Medicaid. Might be the biggest issue in the state today. So I'm wondering what your sort of overall assessment is of the move to the managed care approach. Has it been bad? Has it been good? Has it been somewhere in the middle? Would you change it at all if you advocate for change if you were elected to the legislature?
Okay, that's a very good first question. It's probably the question I hear the most about. And I serve on boards that have to deal with Medicaid privatization. I believe that in the last 2 years, privatizing Medicaid has been a disaster. And it's been a disaster from the point of the persons needing the service providers, and even the managed care organizations. I am fortunate enough to serve on the Boys and Girls Home Board, and every month during our board meetings, we hear about how claims that in the past have been paid have been denied and then delayed and eventually paid at a lower rate than is acceptable. It's not just a cash flow problem. It's a case that they're being reimbursed or paid at a 40 to 45% of what the cost actually is. And I see that it's not just with populations such as those being served by Boys and Girls Home, but Jackson Recovery. I understand talking to hospitals, they're having difficulty with this. I recently went to a meeting about health care in relationship to nursing homes, long-term care, and that population. They're having difficulty with Medicaid also. And they're saying because of that, in the next few years, we may have nursing homes closed down because they just cannot stay open. Now this is a really rough time for this population to have fewer options, because we have a whole group of baby boomers needing more options, needing more places to go. And instead they're talking about that there could be 15 to 20% of nursing homes and long-term care places that will have to close down because they just cannot stay open.
Is it a matter of making adjustments in the new system, or ditching that system entirely and going back to what we used to do? Because obviously the reason for going to managed care was to try to rein in the rising costs to the state of providing Medicaid.
Right. And supposedly we were going to be saving a great deal of money going to privatizing, but that has not been the case at all. In fact, just recently the managed care organizations are asking for a $100 million increase. So that increase, with no proof that they've actually saved any money whatsoever. And you can save money or even save a small amount of money, but if you're not providing services, are you really saving money? You're just denying the services that should really be taking place. I have a letter from a well-respected doctor in town who has been working as a doctor since 1976, who is saying that this has really been a disaster for doctors, hospitals. His case was talking about psychiatric doctors that are being reimbursed at such a low level that they're leaving, and they're probably not coming back very quickly. But we used to have 6 psychiatrists in the Siouxland area, in Sioux City, and we're down to 3, and we're not sure we can keep the 3. So those are things that we're driving our service providers out of business. We're not providing the service. Who actually is benefiting from the privatization?
So you would advocate for going back to how we did it before? I mean, in other words, ditching the privatization approach.
I believe that we need to do a transition, because obviously going from a government managed system to a privatized, didn't have enough forethought, didn't have enough planning. We need to do some planning. We need to do some serious talking about strategies that are going to serve those that need to be served. And we have a large population in Iowa that are under 600,000, 500,000 people. And in the Siouxland area alone, when we're talking about it, that's a great number of our population that are on Medicaid.
Education is my next issue. Obviously an issue near and dear to your heart, spending your entire professional career in education. And I want to talk about funding, and if you believe that the state of Iowa underfunds public education. I mean, I think the state aid increase in the last session was around 1%. So I'll just frame it that way. Does Iowa spend enough on K-12 public education, in your opinion?
Okay, when I think of education, I think of early childhood through post-secondary, but you're asking in particular about K through 12. But I think all those areas are very important. And education is very dear to my heart. I was a teacher for 11 years, I was a principal for 24, and actually now I work with a program that we work with 18 to 24-year-olds that have been involved in the juvenile or adult criminal system, justice system, and we help them get their high school diploma, they help get training, and then go on and get a job and help them keep a job. And it's a program called Boost, and I feel very passionate about that too. So that's my part of education from preschool, because most of education, most of learning happens between 0 to 5 years old. So we mustn't forget about that population either. In relationship to the funding, 1%, you talk to school board members, our local school board members, and they say that their expenditures are far exceeding what they're bringing in for revenues. So it's going to be affecting what's happened. I was fortunate enough to be a very young principal in 1992 when Iowa was first in the nation in education. In '94, I was recognized as Principal of the Year for the state of Iowa. And at that time, people would ask me, so what makes Iowa first in the nation? And I would say, we have skilled, motivated, caring educators, and the state really cares about education. They understand that education is foundation for future economic development. It's what the state should be doing, is working on education. And now at this point, our education, I do not feel it has been valued. Public education, and you said K-12, but also secondary, I feel has been shortchanged also. We're putting our money elsewhere. In my opinion, when you talk about what do you value, your budget tells you what you value. You can go on and on about how you want to strengthen education, you want to do this, but if your budget doesn't show it, then are you really valuing it?
So if the state was to provide more funding for K-12 and for post-secondary education, the money would need to come from somewhere. So something else would get less if education gets more. How would you strike that balance? How would you provide the additional funding?
Like any budget, you can't give one without the other. However, I do believe we've been giving large tax breaks to out-of-state corporations, and that really concerns me. I'd have a easier time accepting that if it was small businesses in our local area, but large corporation, when you're giving to one of the most profitable companies in the world, giving them, yes, Apple, $213 million. That $213 million could go, I believe, into education. It could go into a lot of different places. But I do flee, and that's just one. This coming year, I understand this last session, even more is going to out-of-state corporations, large corporations.
So you would, one of the main ways you would find more money for education would be shifting money away from the economic development incentives provided and moving those funds into education.
I strongly believe in economic development too. I serve as the trustee on the airport board, Sioux Line Gateway Airport Board, and I believe we need those kind of economic developments too. I mean, we've come a long ways in the airport in the last 4 years, and believe me, that is a perfect example of an organization that works well. The city of Sioux City, of course, has some say in that, but the trustees, and we work with 185th. The 185th, we have a wonderful relationship in that they take care of the firefighting equipment. We make sure the runway can handle their big tankers. We work well together, which makes sense, which you would say that's a no-brainer. But not that far down the road in Des Moines, their Air National Guard and their airport do not work well together. But I believe economic development is very important, but we do live in an area that we, and I know this because I write grants and I help administer, we were able to get this grant because we are high poverty, high crime. We are low when it comes to unemployment. But I do believe that economic breaks. But I question some of the ones that were taken when we pay $213 million to a corporation, a business, Apple, and they haven't even asked for us to give that, but we just gave it to them.
So maybe we spend too much on incentives, or maybe we don't spend those dollars wisely enough.
Right. Even the managed care or out-of-state managed care organizations. And I'm not saying that we only can work with state or local, but I do believe that should be a preference.
The tax cuts package passed by the legislature this year, what's your opinion of that bill? Was that a good bill or a bad bill for Iowa?
I believe there needed to be something. However, I believe a tax bill should be really focused on the middle class. I believe it needs to be fair, and I believe it needs to be simple.
And you do not feel this bill was focused enough on the middle class?
No.
Or simple?
Right. I believe that it really, my dad used to be a tax preparer and a financial planner. And when I was very young, and I would try to help put the papers together and all that long before it was all on computer, he would say to me, Rita, we all do better when we all do better. And I was trying to figure out what he meant by that, because when you're young, you're kind of trying to figure out what your parents are saying. But he would say, you know, when a friend of mine's family was doing well, this small, medium-sized, small farmer, and they did well, then they would in turn buy goods and all that. And I also had a friend whose father was working in a local factory, and when he got an increase, he certainly couldn't spend a great deal, but it was making sure he could pay his bills. I don't think just having the very top 5%, 1% doing well is the answer. The answer to me is that middle class, it needs to be fair, and it needs to be simple.
It's amazing how, as you get older, what your parents say makes so much more sense, right, over time?
Yes, yes.
And how you understand it better.
Right,
You begin to think like them and talk like them, and yes.
And I have 2 grown children, and they'll say, how did you know that, Mom? I say, well, you know, you have a lot of experiences in life. I've had a lot of experiences. I've learned from a lot of opportunities to learn.
Another issue is related to a bill passed by the legislature in 2017, and that was the collective bargaining, changes to collective bargaining bill. And now you saw the contract process from a teacher's standpoint and from an administrator's standpoint. So I'm wondering what you thought of the changes made to collective bargaining overall. Was that a good bill or a bad bill for Iowa, in your opinion?
I believe there was need for some changes, but not to completely destroy it. I do believe that teachers, public nurses, police officers, DHS workers, anybody who works for the city have a need to have their representation. And I believe they need to have their representation not only with their wage, but their conditions, their benefits. So I believe that bill, I would strongly encourage it to go back to what it was like in 2017, but make some changes to that, not completely eliminate it.
You believe it totally destroyed the collective bargaining process?
I think it did a lot of damage to it. And I have neighbors that have come to me afterwards and said, you know, it really affected them directly and not in a positive way. I don't believe there was a lot of good that was done when that was completely...
What would be an example or two of changes that you would advocate for in the process?
I think some of the, and I'm forgetting what the term of it is, but it's arbitration. The arbitration part, I believe, needs to be looked at. Okay? Is that what you're...
You just alluded to the fact that there were some changes that you would support, but you thought that overall the bill went too far.
Yes, it did. It went way too far.
And I was just curious what a couple of changes would be that you think would be good changes that you would accept.
Right. I think that needs to be looked at too. Governor Ray, a Republican, Robert Ray, was the one that initiated, I believe, collective bargaining, and he had a reason for it, and I believe that those reasons are still very important right now.
What can I ask?
Go ahead.
Since you're real familiar with those good years, as we like to call them in Iowa, what were we doing right then that we're not doing now?
I don't think it's one simple thing that has changed. I think it's a general attitude. I think we kind of took advantage, or took for granted, let's say, how good our education was here in Iowa. I mean, you're not first in the nation for no reason, but people really worked well together. I believe the state understood how important education was, not only for our students, but for the whole community. When your schools are doing well, your whole community tends to do better. Your whole state does better. And for that reason, I don't think it just received the respect it deserves, and the funding actually. Okay.
So the funding didn't keep up with what we needed to do.
Exactly.
Can I ask, do you mind if I ask my other one I want to ask about? Higher education is so expensive these days. What can you do to change that? Because I think we're pricing kids out of going to college.
And I would agree with you. I do believe, I mean, I have connections with Western Iowa Tech with this new program that I'm working with. We have students get training. We go to Western Iowa Tech, they go to the different area colleges. I believe they need to be funded at a higher level also. I mean, this is our future. We talk about how important it is, yet do we fund it at a level of keeping up with the inflation? When you have a 1% increase and it's a 4% inflation, that's saying that you're going back 3% every year. And that's been the case for the last several years. So I think we have some wonderful colleges and universities. I'm a graduate of Iowa State University, and I feel very proud to be that. But I do think we need to realize that in order for you to have programs, institutions like that, you need to take care of that.
And I bet it was cheaper when you graduated.
Well, at the time it seemed like a lot, but you're right. It was a lot less expensive. But,
yeah.
And I ended up paying for my own college. So you really understand when you pay for your own schooling how much it adds up. So
within the budget, aside from the education pieces that we've talked about, the K through 12 and now the post-secondary, do you have other priorities that you believe are underfunded by the state within the budget that you would advocate for increased funding for if you were elected?
Let me think here. There's education.
I mean, nobody thinks they get enough.
Right,
of
right.
course.
There's always only so much in the
yes.
in the pot. I'm glad you brought up Medicaid because that's extremely important to me. I'm trying to think right offhand if there's anything.
But those would be primarily the Medicaid part and the education part are for you.
Right.
At the top.
They're right up there. Yes. Yes, they are.
What local priorities would you seek to champion if you were elected? What do you hear locally, whether it be local interest in the general umbrella issue of education, or whether it's a specific project here in Sioux City? What are you hearing from the folks who live here? Boy, if you get to Des Moines, we'd like for you to champion this for us or that for us.
I think education obviously goes up, and part of that is because I was an educator and consider myself an educator. I think other priorities, being on the airport, I hear about different things in relationship to Sioux Gateway and the airport, about what we need to help with that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's lots of things. It's almost every day I get some other issue that something comes up. But I would say education, making sure that the middle class are being treated fairly.
And Medicaid, you said you hear a lot of concerns about the need for change within the Medicaid system.
That was a change that was not prepared for and was not looked at thoroughly as far as I'm concerned.
How are you?
10 minutes.
Okay. Do you believe the regional approach to mental health services is working? I think that was a fairly recent change within the last several years to the regional system. Obviously here in Woodbury County that's been a huge issue of contention over the last year. Overall, do you think that was a good change in the delivery of mental health services?
Mental health, I would say that we are For instance, we have 36 spots, I'm going to say, and my work, when I work with the clients through Boost, we have a lot of persons that could probably need some help with mental health issues. So in relationship to that question, I would say, could you ask it again? I want to make sure I'm answering it correctly, or answering what you're asking.
Basically, I'm just wondering if you think the move to a regional concept where you have counties together in groups
I see that
delivering mental health services, and that was a change from how it used to be. Do you think that system is working? Do you think mental health services, delivery of mental health services has improved since we went to that sort of a structure?
No, I don't. I believe, for instance, we have 36 spots for persons that need mental health, and 12 for those under the age of 18, and 24 for adults. That is just not covering what needs to be done. I don't believe that's even going to cover what we would need in a region. And so when we close down and we don't have those mental health facilities, and we don't have beds that are covering that, I think that's a real issue. And it's, I'm not sure what exactly we just need more. We instead of closing down and closing down and closing down, when you're only taking care of 36 persons in the state of Iowa, and that covers the entire state, that is not even coming close to addressing the needs that we have in this area.
So obviously you feel it's an issue that needs more attention,
right.
More study,
yes.
Improvement, more attention.
Right. I mean,
we should not assume everything is fine and we don't need to worry about that issue anymore.
No, I believe it's a major issue. When you work in the school system and you work with different populations, which I have as a principal, you understand that there's a lot more than 36 for the whole state of Iowa. And actually, of the 36, 12 are for under the age of 18 that need help. And what that does is just puts a real stress on all parts of the community.
This is the one issue is totally unrelated to the last question, but I'm wondering if you feel there's anything that the state government can do or should do in the wake of the Molly Tippett's tragedy. There's been a lot of discussion about, in the wake of that murder and the arrest of an undocumented man for it, whether there's something that the federal government should do or can do, whether there's something state government can or should do. Perhaps there isn't. But do you have any thoughts on that event and the response to the event, and whether there's anything, whether there's a role for the state of Iowa as a government to play in the wake of that tragedy?
The Molly Tippett's thing is very sad. It's very disappointing. It's more than disappointing. It's extremely sad. However, those decisions, and with Molly Tippett in particular, I'm thinking, you know, the family is very much aware that those decisions, I have a hard time answering that just because I feel very badly about that whole situation. But even the family says that it's not something that it's not a state decision; it's a federal decision. Mm-hmm. So, in that case, I'm not sure that we can really address that, because as sad as it is, and very unfortunate, even their own family feels like it's something that needs to be handled at a national level.
Immigration is a federal,
right.
National
right.
issue. There really isn't much a state government can do
right.
On that issue. Okay.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to ask you to sort of differentiate between you and your opponent. And I don't know if you want to provide us with your biggest criticisms of him, or if you don't want to go that direction, maybe just sort of what do you think are your best personal attributes that make you a good a good person for the position of state legislator, and why would you be a stronger person for that position?
Okay, my priorities and my interests are slightly different, I believe, than my opponent. I believe strongly in providing education at a level and being funded at a level that all persons can be successful. I also believe in early childhood. In relationship to my opponent, I believe we just have different priorities and different ways of reaching those priorities. And I really believe in keeping a campaign clean and appropriate, so I would not talk negatively about an opponent in any way. I just believe it's very important that we look at what's important to the citizens of Iowa, and most importantly the ones that are in our House District 6, because their priorities are what we're representing down in Des Moines. And I believe that this case, the ones that are most important to me and what are most important, because I believe this is what the citizens, when I go out knocking on doors, when I talk to people, they are concerned about education. They're concerned about Medicaid. They're concerned about their families being able to make a living and being safe. I think we just have different ways that we will go about and what we prioritize is what is important.
So you feel you are a better fit for the district in terms of the priorities within that district, and you were speaking to the issues that are most important,
right,
to the people in the 6th, as opposed to your opponent.
And I wouldn't be running if I didn't feel that way. I do feel it's very important that we take care of our schools, that we take care of the citizens, and that doesn't say that I don't think my opponent is feeling the same way, but I feel that we're going about it in different ways.
And how so?
How so? I believe that we need to fund school at the level of schools, education at the level of 4%, if not more, where in the past my opponent has agreed to accept a lower amount. And those schools are very vital. They're our future. I believe the Medicaid situation needs to be changed. It needs to be changed soon. And it needs to be studied and changed very quickly because it's just not functioning. Where I believe that's not the same way that my opponent feels.
And part of that question was personal attributes. I like to ask candidates for public office what they feel are their greatest strengths as personal attributes that position them well to be, whether it's a council member or a county board member or a legislator or a member of Congress, that would position them well to perform those duties and responsibilities.
Right. I believe I'm a problem solver. I have worked with, as a teacher, as a principal, and now as a person involved with a grant working with 18 to 24-year-olds who have been involved in the juvenile justice or the adult system, helping them get their life back on track. I believe that I have those experiences. I believe the reason why I am a candidate that will listen. I believe that the people in the area, House District 6, care about the same issues that I care about. And those are the ones of education and taking Medicaid and the future.
1 minute.
Just give you a last chance. If there's anything else you'd like to say to the voters within your district, we'll give you an opportunity. If there's something we didn't ask about, something you wanted to add, feel free. Just make your stump speech here.
Make my stump speech? Well, I'm Rita DeJong, and I would like to represent House District 6 because I believe that we can make the state of Iowa better, but more importantly, probably House District 6. I want to represent the people of House District 6 because I believe we have the same values, the same interests, the same needs. I've been an educator for a long time. I've been trying to take care of the future population, future in Iowa, and I still strongly believe that we should be number one. We should be number one in the nation.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you.